everybody, so today I am going to be painting a photo I took last summer at an AJR concert at K-Days. It was the best concert experience I have ever had so far. I haven't had many, but it was amazing. I would love to go back. So I am actually doing this watercolor painting on an 8x10 wood panel. I got a 5-pack the other day, and I am prepping it with let me find the bottle. Here we go. It is Daniel Smith watercolor ground. It's titanium white. So with this, you're just supposed to be able to apply it to a surface and prep it for watercolors. I don't think I did this correctly. The instructions aren't super clear. It just says thick, brushable, and heavy pigment. Allow 24 to 72 hours to cure before applying. So I think I put too thin of a layer on, however it still worked fairly well, I would say. Don't have much to compare it to, but for first time it wasn't bad. I just put some on and watered it down, and here I am transferring a sketch, the one on the left that is a picture I took on my iPad. I did this same picture about a year ago, right after the concert, but I did it with Posca pens, and it just didn't turn out how I wanted it to. So I thought I would revisit that today. So for the background, I just mixed together like an indigo, a quinacridone rose, and another blue, just to make it a little bit more purple. If I could restart this painting, I would have started a lot darker. In the end, it turned out okay. I did a couple layers to build that up, but I definitely didn't block in a dark enough background. One thing I constantly think about from art school was one of our teachers told us, if you think it's too dark, it's probably just dark enough. So that's kind of something that has stuck with me, and I always think about once I'm doing darker backgrounds or darker portions of drawings. One thing I will say about painting on wood is you expect the watercolors to react differently, but once you actually start painting, you realize how different it is. It laid down very nicely, I would say. The only thing that I kind of had an issue with was blending the color out. Because the wood kind of soaks up the color, you have a very, very limited time to water it down, to drag the color out and kind of make a softer edge or a gradient. So that was interesting to try to work around, but I think overall I did fairly well. Here I'm just taking an extra hairdryer that I have and just trying to get those layers as dry as possible, as quick as possible. I don't want to spend all day on this drawing, but I don't want to rush it and risk ruining it either way. But it did help, and since the wood soaks it up, the watercolors dry fairly quickly, so it wasn't too bad. Here I'm just cleaning up my palette to mix together some opera pink, and I think I also added some quinacridone rose, just to make it a little bit more of a reddish pink, just for the lights in the background. Another thing I would probably do differently is before I block in any sort of background colors, I probably would go back and just do like a really light pink wash over the entire painting. Just that way it ties in some of the colors a little bit more, but it also kind of helps prevent those harsher edges around the light, as you can see like on the right hand side of the picture right now. In the end, that does kind of get covered up with the continuous layers of the background. However, I feel like I could maybe have avoided that a little bit more and just helped make the piece look a little bit more uniform in the end. Tell here that that line between the opera pink and like the indigo mixture, that's already kind of faded away a bit just with drying and putting another layer on. I'm dipping into that pink mixture again and adding almost some rim lighting. It's not super noticeable in the end product adding this pink, but I feel it was a good choice. And this is where I'm going to start doing some smaller washes where I'm filling in the hair and the clothes. I really didn't like how the guitar was turning out. The colors just kind of looked muddy and they were blending weirdly, but looking at the final piece, I think the colors actually blended together quite nicely and has a nice effect to it. One thing I really like about this painting and just the picture in general is this specific photo. As soon as I look at it, I remember exactly what song was playing and just how it felt to be at the concert, and it was such a nice experience there. Just the energy of the show was amazing, and I actually, as soon as they announced that they were coming back, I bought tickets. Since then, the show has obviously been postponed with everything going on in the world, but I'm excited to go once they announce the new date. Painted the face here, the colors actually bled together quite a lot. His face ended up going from a skin tone with a bit of blush to half of it being red. But luckily it wasn't too bad to try correct. A bit of a purple mixture again, just to start adding some shadows and some depth to Jack in this photo. One thing I quite like to do is whenever I'm doing pretty much any sort of painting or artwork, I don't like to add like just gray shadows. more often than not, I will use some sort of like a purple or an indigo shade. Personally, I find it just gives a bit more warmth and a nice overall feel to the painting rather than just a gray, which can sometimes dull it down quite a bit. Those shorts, I had a lot of trouble coloring those in because it seemed that no matter how many washes, it wasn't the right value and it just looked off. In the end, it's still not quite right, but it doesn't look as weird as it did earlier on in the piece. At this point, I started cleaning up my paints. I guess I thought I was done, but just looking back at the painting, I decided that, you know what, that background is not dark enough. It took me a minute to get to there. I was figuring out what color pencils I wanted to use for outlining and for highlighting if I wanted gel pen or Posca, and I'm just drawing off those final layers. And this is where I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's not dark enough. So I pulled my watercolors back out again, grabbed my paint water, and I went back to mixing that background color. This time, instead of a flat brush, I just went in right away with one of my round brushes. I'm using a size 8. I just wanted to be able to blend those edges to a bit of a softer edge a little bit faster, and also get in some of those odd shapes that you can't quite do with a flat brush, like around the face and especially around the end of the guitar. Doing smaller areas in watercolor on a panel like this is quite nice to work with. However, when you're doing larger areas, don't expect to get a flat wash. It does not react anywhere near what paper does. It'll be kind of patchy, and the watercolor will travel through the grain of the wood depending on how you prep it. You have to mix more paint than you think you'll use because it absorbs it differently than paper. However, I was quite happy with this because I like the texture and the look that it gave. Here I'm drying off that final layer of the background color. As you can see, it's definitely darker than in the beginning, but it's still not quite as dark as I would like it to be. And I actually also go in with one more wash to those shorts just because it just looked off. So I wanted to darken that up a little bit more, separate it from the t-shirt. But there we go, drying that off one last time, and that's it for the watercolors. Here I decided that I wanted to go in with a Posca pen, not a gel pen. Either way, they probably wouldn't have been like super opaque, like as if you were using acrylic paint, which I find I still haven't been able to find a good gel pen for that. So if you have any recommendations for super opaque gel pens, especially on like watercolors, please let me know. I would love to find one. I always find that whatever color I put it on top of, it just makes it a lighter version of that color. One of the last steps, I'm just pulling out some of my pencil crayons and adding some more blush to the face because I couldn't quite get it with the watercolor. Here I'm using my Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils to outline. I love using fine liners and ink. However, I feel that pencil crayons definitely give a softer look. Here's just a close-up shot of me using the pencil crayons. I love using inks and I love using fine liners. I like the harshness of it. I like the textures you can get. However, I feel for my watercolor work, I tend to reach for pencil crayons over fine liners, just for the simple fact that a lot of my watercolor work is fairly soft, and pencil crayons help me really push that rather than the harshness of a fine liner. Here you can see what I was talking about with the watercolor bleeding into the grain, and also when it bleeds into the grain, it ends up looking a bit darker than how the color actually is. Here we're getting close to the end of me using pencil crayons. I went in with just a light pink just to go over those lights to make them a little bit brighter. I would have went back in with watercolors. However, I really didn't want to get any of those harsh edges around it or darken up the edges around it. So I felt pencil crayons were a good choice for that. They blended in nicely. And with that, this painting is done. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to share some more work with you later. Have a great day.